Welcome to Super Entrepreneurs Podcast. Today we have with us Larry Dorfman. Larry is the co-founder of Roots, is a real estate investment fund with a unique business model that creates wealth for its investors and property residents simultaneously. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you. Good to be here with you this morning.
Oh, it's
How are
great
you?
to have you, my friend. This is exciting, huh?
It
So
is. It's quite,
basically, create wealth for its investors. Can you elaborate on that? Can we talk about this more?
I'd love to. I actually get to
Perfect.
brag on it a bit, Saeed, because my son
No,
created
please
this-
go ahead.
my son created the vision, so I'm just working with him. It's a great opportunity. I was honored to be asked by him to actually be involved in this journey that he wanted to develop, which is tied around the concept that real estate investment's been pretty much off limits for about 90% of Americans. If you think about it, other than trying to own a rental and the risks and liabilities of owning 1, 2, 3, 4 properties and trying to manage them yourselves, the average American who's not an accredited investor really has a difficult time getting any way heavy into the real estate business, which is where much of the wealth in the world has been made. Daniel came up with a thought process after about a decade in the real estate business. How do you open this up? How do you more democratize ownership of investment grade residential properties that are rented? And they tied it together with a little bit of an unusual concept of, what if you actually had the residents who rent the properties, who pay the rent, be a part of the activity, be partners in the fund, be investors in the fund? What would happen if they actually owned a piece of the place they lived in while they rented, rather than rent to own? What if they owned a piece of the entire fund, every property in the fund? They were investors just like everyone else, the accredited investors or anyone else. He established this thought process. We got together, talked about it. I loved it because I really think that the person who rents in America is in a very disadvantaged position. The average renter in America makes less than $60,000 in the household. They have an average of less than $650 in a lifetime savings. To me, that's borderline fringe homeless. One event in your house, one life experience, and you can be living somewhere else, which the pandemic would have been that for many people if there weren't a couple of $1 trillion spent to help support us. So our thinking is, if this resident's going to be living in this home, what if they actually lived in it like they own it? What if they took care of the property, paid the rent on time, were really good neighbors with the other people around them, and then were able to participate in actually owning the property with us? It happens very easily. Go ahead.
So to clarify this, basically, someone that's looking to rent a property to live in, they would connect with you guys. You guys would say, okay, I have these properties. You can get involved with us. You can live there, and a portion of it will be in the business side of the holdings as well. Is that correct?
It is. There are several models out there that basically inflate the rent, if you would, so that they can then say they're taking a piece of the money and it'll be yours when you leave, or they put it into some account somewhere. The big challenge in the market for everybody is, where do you save your cash? In the low interest rate days, you made 0.5%. So maybe you can get 1.5 in a savings account today. How does that work over a long term against 6% inflation? It doesn't, right? So in this case, a resident comes to live with us. Let's say they have a $1,500 deposit, right? That deposit goes immediately into their own personal investment account at the Roots Real Estate Investment Community Fund. It's a Reg A fund, so anybody can invest as little as $100. So that $1,500 becomes their stake in their real estate portfolio. And then for every month they live in it like they own it, they pay the rent on time, they take care of the property, and then we ask them once a quarter just to walk around and take a video. Let us see how the property is, point out anything that needs to be fixed, help us take care of the property. They get a rental rebate between $50 and $100. So that's what, $600 to $1,200 a year. That's also added into their account. Last year, the fund generated 16% in appreciated value and returns, both in dividends and the value of the property. So the people with us last year in their first full year with us ended up with over $2,000 in their bank account with us, in their fund, their actual investment. Think about it. That's almost 4 times what the average person had in savings. Now, how do you bridge a wealth gap? If you have an average savings account of $600 with nowhere to make it grow, and you have no expendable income at the end of any month, with an income around $50,000 or $60,000. With this, you take this. Here's what's really amazing. When we first got into it, I had to learn some life lessons. We all live in a different place, right? And so when we started with our first residents and we told them we were going to let them have their security deposit become a reserve account and go into the fund, they looked at us like we had 7 eyes and said, "You're lying. I've never gotten a security deposit back." Yeah. To our calculations, about 81% of the people never got any of their security deposit back, and most got very little. And we continue to survey this to see if it's changing, but it's not. In the workforce housing world, that security deposit is considered the cost of living. It's just considered part of having to get a place. And if you want to move, you have to have another one in the first month's rent again. It makes it very challenging. Here, in fact, here's an interesting point. If the national statistics are that there's less than $600 or $650 in savings, they clearly aren't even including the security deposit and the amount of the savings that the resident has, right? We immediately take that money and put it to work for them so that when they choose to leave, if they choose to leave at some point in the future, they can take 100% of that money with them. If they took really good care of the property, there'll be no charges. If there are a few things that need to be fixed, they would be fixed just like any other security deposit. And obviously it just regardless, it gets the resident, it would be anywhere. But here's the point. The landlord-tenant relationship has been a miserable thing for many years. Daniel does a very good video on the front of our website that talks about the landlord-tenant relationship. We won't use the word tenant. We use the word resident. We treat people as human beings, and then they get a chance to be a part of the investment community.
I like that.
Yeah, it's really as simple as that. And here's the other point is that take the median income of $75,000 or so across the United States. How many of those people can invest in a big real estate fund? They're not accredited investors. They can't put the minimum 50, 100, 200,000, much less afford the fees that these people charge.
So can the renter, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, so now let me get that question from you. I hear a good question coming. Go ahead.
So if they wanted to scale like the resident, right? I like that you use that term, showing respect to humanity, right? So it's very, you guys, the resident, if they wanted to scale with you guys, say they start earning more money, for example, does that mean they have to, obviously don't rent multiple locations, right? They can't live in multiple places, but can they scale? Is there a plan for that?
Boy, is that a great question. I have not been asked that question. I love it. They are already scaled upon the first investment. Right now, the fund owns 31 properties, and we have another 27 being prepared to go into the fund. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. But the answer is the moment they invest the first amount, they own a piece of the fund, not just one property. They're diversified.
Oh, they're a part of the whole thing.
Yes, they don't. This is not your rent to own where you put $7,000 or $8,000 or $9,000 up, and if you don't close in 2 years, you lose your money. This is own while you rent. Literally, the moment you sign your lease and pay your deposit, you're an investor in the fund, and you're earning quarterly dividends as well as any appreciated value of the stock or of the units, as they're called. Now, here's what you asked points to another great solution that Daniel came up with, which is, so let's say I'm paying $1,500 a month in rent and I get a raise and I'm making some more money and I want to start really investing on a consistent basis and scale my real estate holdings. It is as simple as going onto the website or onto the platform, our software platform, and clicking a box and saying, I want $50 a month put into my fund account. I want you to draw it out of my checking account, right into my fund account, and I'm going to start automatically saving $50 or $75 or $100 a month. Warren Buffett says
towards the fund.
to in the fund. It goes in immediately. It's already
So let me get this straight. So say, for example, it's $1,500 deposit, right? That they put in. They're part of the fund now. They're renting. They're paying every month. They're ensuring the property is in optimal condition because now they're not just a renting. They're actually part of their asset, right? So they're taking care of it. Now, if another aspect of the scale could be that if someone wanted to add additional money into it, they can tell you guys, say, you know what, 50, $100, can you put it towards a fund? I want a bigger stake. Is that
That's
really what it
exactly
is?
correct.
Okay.
Exactly right. Warren Buffett, and every time you hear him speak about saving money and building wealth, two things occur. One is real estate, right? One is real estate, is take everything you need to live on and put the rest in real estate. That's what he just told LeBron James recently. Not that LeBron should have a trouble saving and building wealth, but for the average human, same thing. They just don't have a way to go to real estate. If the second most important thing he says is it has to be automatic. It has to not be a function you have to actually go put your $50 up every month. Have it come out of your checking account straight into your savings. That's why you have a 401k. Take that away. You never miss it. Have an automatic $50 withdrawal. It's a couple less drinks every weekend, but you have it saved and put away.
One drink.
And we have a calculator that's being placed on our website, hopefully next week, that you can actually go in and estimate. I got a targeted amount of money I'd like to have in 20 years. I have a target amount of money I'd like to have in 10 years, 5 years.
So it'll tell you how much to put in every month.
Exactly. And you can put in if it makes 10%, 12%, 15%, whatever. Our targeted rates or targeted returns are 15. We earn 16 the first year. We could be 12. And what they say, previous experience doesn't guarantee future results. The good news about real estate is that it is dirt. It's tangible. It's not going anywhere. It's insured. So the chances are the property itself is going to keep some value, right? And whatever the market does, we have a good chance of succeeding with it. And it's for us, go ahead.
So when this is a fund, right? So for example, I'm not 100% sure on this point, but when you guys come across a property where you can take it and bring it into your fund, but you notice that there's an opportunity to flip it or get rid of it for a very hefty profit. Do you do that and then that's shared amongst the investors?
Yes. So first of all, a couple of unique things. Daniel calls it de-risking the fund. First of all, Roots Real Estate Investment Community only buys properties that are fully optimized. They're already rented. They're cash flowing at 6% or better. That's very unusual. This is a REIT, a real estate investment trust.
REIT, yeah.
But it's a Reg A REIT, which means anyone can invest as low as $100 and own a piece of Atlanta, Georgia. All of our properties are currently in Atlanta.
And that's a uniqueness that is Reg A?
Yeah, there's some other Reg A's.
In the market?
There are other Reg A's, but it's very hard and very compliant. It's an SEC. So the SEC regulations you have to comply with on a consistent basis so that average income folks can invest. It's a protection aspect of the SEC. We file with the SEC every time we buy a piece of property. We have to file it. We have to keep it very tight. So your question is a great question. We buy all the property at what's called the sponsorship level, a company called Seed, which is the property manager for Roots. And we take all the risk on the Seed side. We'll buy a piece of property, we'll fix it up, and we'll rent it. That could take anywhere from a month to 5 months. In most funds, they buy the property, and while it's empty, it's costing the fund part of its returns. It's lowering the returns. In this case, we only buy properties at Roots from Seed, and Seed's already rented it, so they've got a property that's cash flowing and making money. That's the first de-risk. The second one is, if we buy a property at the Seed side and it's not good, we get into it and we start doing some light renovations and find out the floorboards are out, the roof needs to be replaced, there's all kinds of problems. We may have to sell it for a loss, or maybe we make a couple of bucks on it on the Seed side, but it doesn't ever impact Roots. On the other side, where this quarter Roots is purchasing 17 townhomes that we've had for a year and a half. The reason that Roots couldn't buy it before this is that the income from the rents wasn't producing enough cash flow. We had to wait a year and a half to get the rents up to where the rent was producing 6+% in cash flow, because that's our rule for Roots. When we bought that property in May of 2021, we paid $3.1 million for it. We did a little bit of renovation. They're relatively new. We worked the property. We took the less rent for a long period of time and finally rolled those rents up very slowly because we don't try to move people up more than 5% a year. When somebody moved out, we would move the rent to full scale. But before that, we didn't move one client out. That property will be bought by Roots for about $3.9 million. It appraises for $4,950,000. Now, we did think about flipping the property. That's $1 million cash, right? Into Roots right now. But why would we do that? And yes, all that money would be in the fund and shared. We have to pay 90% or more of that money out every year, whatever profit is made. But why would we do that and cause any member that's been in there less than a year to pay ordinary income tax on a cash distribution when the point is to grow the wealth? And then at some point when people are ready to take it out, they pay capital gains. If they've stayed with us 1 year, they've got a capital gains.
Makes sense.
So it just, right now we're building this platform. We want to put 400 to 500 houses in the first Roots fund and then grow another one. So we won't be flipping any homes for a while, but any profit made in Roots real estate investment community is shared amongst every single shareholder pro rata based on how much they own.
Excellent. Larry, not to be negative or anything, we are going to have some foreclosures and issues as the recession hits. Is there a way that some of these homeowners could avoid foreclosure and bring the home to you guys to purchase, to rent it out?
It's interesting. I can't believe you're going to ask them the questions. The first thing we started doing was going to the banks during the pandemic and asking them to ask anyone they were needing to foreclose on, introduce them to us. We don't need to buy.
It is an option.
Absolutely. We'd love to find a person who unfortunately is in a situation, maybe they're
because they'll help people.
And we pay the mortgage off in many cases, just depending on the value of the home. If we can make it work, we'll pay the mortgage off and give them some cash to pay some bills off, let them live there and build their equity back again. That would be the perfect picture for us. We would love to help anybody who's in a mortgage situation.
Good.
Keep the home they're in. Now, we're not nationwide yet, so I need to put that caveat in. We're in Atlanta. We're around Georgia. We can handle anything within a couple hours of Atlanta, but we don't want to exceed what our ability to manage the properties and do the right things are. Go ahead. Yeah.
So Larry, any foreign investors can get involved as well? Anybody outside, because we are a global podcast, right? So if anybody wants to get involved, can they be part of it?
They can. There are different rules in every country. We have not done we know we can, and we know that people can invest from other countries.
No problem.
But we don't know their tax laws and what we need to do. But if somebody's interested, it would be very hard to take $100 investment from Costa Rica right now, let's say, because there's so much paperwork and cost to managing that one external thing. But our intention, by the way, is to be global and to be access to real estate ownership in America for anybody in the world. It's just, we're in a very early stage. We're only about 1.5 years, 2 years also.
No, of course, Larry. There's the option that we're talking about is an individual or a family coming in as a resident and renting and being part of the fund. But is there an option for someone that doesn't need to rent and just wants to put money in like any other fund? Of course, they should be able to do it as well.
Yeah, we've raised about $10 million. And of that, only about 176,000 is the residents. Remember that the residents are, we've got about 107 doors right now. So those are the residents, but to buy the properties, you need a lot more money than that, right? So the residents will always be the smaller part of the investment, but treated just like the person who put $250,000 in as an accredited investor.
No, excellent. No, that's great. Larry, would you be able to share what you feel your innermost superpower is that got you to this point in your life?
I've heard that question at the end of your podcast before, because
we always ask it.
And I searched long and hard for an innermost power. I think
take your time.
The thing that's made my business life and my personal life successful is the willingness to take time with anybody who asks for it. Is to be available. I think is probably
great.
The most important thing. I think we have to share whatever learning that we have.
Yes.
I don't have an original thought. Everything came from somebody else's book.
Exactly.
or podcast or
Well
whatever.
said.
And I have a website called sharethelearning.com. I actually posted it after I
Oh,
retired from my old company. And it doesn't make any money. It's not made to generate a dollar, but it's got about 100 books I've read with reviews on it and thoughts and just
excellent.
quotes I've stolen from people. And so the people who know me know that I'll spend 10 or 15 minutes to an hour with anybody who wants to sit down and talk.
That's awesome. Appreciate that, Larry. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you guys are doing, you and Daniel. Daniel,
Yeah, correct.
well,
Yes.
give my regards to Daniel. He's doing good work. You're doing good work because people need help. And really, at the end of the day, the more we help each other, the stronger we'll become. The unity and the help and the service to each other. It's all love based. And the stronger the love is in people's lives, the results actually increase with that power. So I appreciate you for taking the time to come on this show. And I'm glad to hear all the wonderful things you're doing.
Thank you. And I love the work you're doing because you come at this whole podcast with your heart, and it's really awesome.
Oh, thank you so much, Larry. A pleasure to meet, pleasure to hear what you just said, because it means a lot, because we do actually just operate from that. We don't try to make it all fancy, but we just comes from a heart. If it turns out fancy, good. If it doesn't, right? So just without you guys, without guests like you, we wouldn't be where we are right now. So I appreciate you. Audience, thank you as well. Really genuinely appreciate you guys as well. I know, like I said to Larry, without you guys, we wouldn't be growing either. So grateful to have you guys part of the audience and helping us grow. Check out Larry and Daniel's information, the show notes. Check out the site. If you have some extra money that you want to build upon, this sounds like very good opportunity to at least investigate further. And Larry says he has a open door policy of somebody. If you guys want to chat with him, get to know him, you can see he's genuine and he's there to help. So definitely get in touch with him. And again, thank you, Larry, and thank you, everyone.